Welcome into another video, this time week 8 Thursday night football. The Buccaneers taking on the Bills. Can't wait to get into this one. Let's get it. Let's take a look at the fantasy players to watch in this game. First on the Bucs side, the top fantasy players in my opinion are quarterback Baker Mayfield, wide receiver Mike Evans, and wide receiver Chris Godwin. For starters, let's talk about Baker Mayfield. Now, Mayfield is going up against a defense giving up the 10th fewest passing yards and ranked second for fantasy points allowed to opposing quarterbacks. This Bills defense just doesn't play. I don't like Mayfield as a fantasy option, even though I know he has been, people's quarterback of choice really as of late, just due to bye weeks and injuries. This is the week that I would advise you to just stay away from Mayfield. The Bills team as a whole is upset for really having that view of not being as good as they were touted up to be to start the season. I can easily see the Bills defense coming out here and just smearing the Bucs all over the field. Mayfield is a fantasy player to watch just due to the amount of people playing him, but in my opinion, he is just a stay away player for me this week. Now let's move on here to Mike Evans. Now Evans is going up against a defense ranked 10th for fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers. Now I've said this in a previous videos there I've had on the channel before. I was just extremely wrong about Mike Evans' fantasy appeal this season. I know he has the talent, and that's never really in question for me, but I just couldn't see Mayfield giving any receiver a fantasy season to remember. As of right now, Mayfield seems to just be chucking the ball down to Evans down the field, just left and right. Just due to being in a negative game script this week, Mike Evans may be the best fantasy option of anyone in this game. Start Mike Evans in all leagues. Lastly, let's talk about Chris Godwin. Now, Godwin is another player that I like in this game. Godwin seems to be a player who is secure in his role. Godwin more of a possession type of receiver, not really a ton of down the field work that's really going over there to Mike Evans. Godwin is just a solid overall play. If the Bills take charge early, and they really start to develop that nice lead, I can see things, as far as the receivers option go, they just have plenty of opportunity to put up fantasy points because they're going to need to be throwing the football quite often. I don't expect a ceiling game from Godwin this week, but I do see him as a solid fantasy wide receiver in week 8. Now let's kind of switch gears here and move over to the Bills team now. The top fantasy players for this team, in my opinion, are quarterback Josh Allen, running back James Cook, wide receiver Stephon Diggs, wide receiver Gabe Davis, and tight end Dalton Kincaid. First, we're going to just talk about Josh Allen. Now, Allen going up against a defense giving up the 6th most passing yards and ranked 11th for fantasy points allowed to opposing quarterbacks. I strongly believe that Josh Allen will come out on a rampage this week. There is so much noise out there right now about whether or not the Bills are really a good team, and I'm sure Josh Allen just wants to prove what his team is all about. I believe that they are going to make examples out of the Bucs, and a big reason will be because of Josh Allen. Get this guy in your lineups and enjoy the fireworks that will happen. Next, let's talk about James Cook. Now, Cook is going up against a defense giving up the 10th fewest rushing yards and ranked 8th for fantasy points allowed to opposing running backs. Cook now, he may have a tough game ahead of him. I'm just going to let you guys know now. Not only is he playing like he was earlier than the season, because early in the season he was actually really doing really good, he's not playing like that anymore. But now he's going up against a defense in the Bucs who has ridden really, really tough on opposing running backs. I have a strong feeling that Josh Allen wants to be, it's going to be his game. He's going to be running the ball. I think running and throwing both will go through Josh Allen. So if you have Cook, you're probably starting him, but you aren't very excited about it. Now let's talk about Stephon Diggs. Now, Diggs is going up against a defense ranked 20th for fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers. I really like this matchup for Diggs. I don't see any of these defensive backs just being able to really consistently stay in front of Diggs. Josh Allen is going to look for this guy early and often. Now, I can see an explosive stat line for Diggs in this matchup. If you own Diggs, you're obviously playing him, but just enjoy what he's going to be able to provide for you in this matchup. Let's move on to Gabe Davis. Now, on this channel, I refer to Gabe Davis as a pure boom or bust type of play. He will either give you a floor game or he's going to give you a ceiling game. There's a good opportunity for him this week to grab some deep ones. Now, this secondary is something that can really be taken advantage of with Josh Allen's strong arm, and Gabe Davis is one to really take advantage of it. Davis should absolutely be in your lineup this week, and pray that he has that 40-plus yard touchdown bomb and just goes off for you. Now, last but not least, for the fantasy players I'm watching this week on Thursday Night Football is Dalton Kincaid. Kincaid is going up against a defense ranked 8th for fantasy points allowed to opposing tight ends. Kincaid saw 8 targets last week and looks good as a receiving tight end. With Dawson Knox expected to receive surgery on his wrist, Kincaid should only see an increase in targets. Again, I believe this will be Josh Allen game, and with that being said, Allen will need guys to throw to. Kincaid can be one of those guys. Just like there's players that I would target in this game, there's also a couple players that I could see having a solid game if you're in a pinch, just in a flex spot, if there's an injury or a bye week. For the Bucks, I could see Rachaad White and Cade Otton as fantasy viable this week. No one of the Bucks have given even White a run for any playtime behind him. This is clearly Rachaad White's backfield. The Bills are actually, a decent matchup for him, so, my problem is that he's just not getting enough touches to take advantage of such a good matchup. On top of that, the negative game script that I can see the Bucks clearly being in is a huge mark against him. If you have him, I believe he's in play here, but just temper your expectations. Cade Otton has been receiving good targets and has talent, but again, it just comes down to the production that he's been producing. He isn't a tight end that I'd be really looking to play this week. The Bills are in a top 10 defense against the tight end position, so just look elsewhere this week at tight end. Now for the Bills, there is no one else I would even consider placing into your lineups. The other wide receivers and running backs don't even receive enough volume to be a viable option. At the end of the day, anyone can go off and become a fantasy asset for your team, but it's up to you to ultimately decide who to put into your lineup. And as always, I do appreciate you guys watching the video. Hit the subscribe button. We're really close to 700 subscribers. We're dropping videos so many times during the week, sometimes 3, 4, 5 videos throughout the week to help you best prepare your lineups on Sunday. That way you can dominate your league and ultimately hold up that trophy. Can't wait to see you guys on the next video. We'll see you guys next time.